The board would now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Coulter, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Villa, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman French, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvie, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, President Reed,
Here.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Williamson, Alderwoman Cruzen, 21 present.
Quorum being present, I'll ask everyone in the chambers and the galleries who's able to stand to please rise for prayer. Giving all honor to God, Almighty God, source of all authority, we humbly ask guidance in our deliberations and wisdom in our conclusions. Amen. We dispense with line item 3, introduction of honored guests. Any introduction of honored guests? Alderman from the 23rd.
Members of the board, I'd like to have as my honored guest today David Holmes, a retired pipe fitter, and Greg Meyer, who's also a constituent of mine in the 23rd Ward.
All right, welcome. Alderman from the 4th, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I'd like to have as my honored guest today Mr. James Robinson, the legal man of the 4th Ward.
All right, welcome, James. Alderman from the 24th.
Hey, thank you, Mr. President. On my left, I'd like to introduce Terry Powers, 24th Ward Committeewoman, and sitting directly adjacent to the Christmas tree in the corner, Ms. Sarah Truckee, my friend and friend to all St. Louisans everywhere.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to have as my special guest today Jenny Nolan in the gallery. She's a resident of the 6th Ward. Thanks for coming, Jenny.
Alderman from the 3rd.
President, members of the board, I'd like to have as my special guest today the committee woman of the 3rd Ward, Ms. Frazier, Lucinda Frazier.
Alderwoman from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I would like to have as my special guest today Mr. Anthony Lancia with the AGC and my peep from Jeff City, Megan Shackelford.
Alderman from the 25th.
I would like to have as my special guest this morning Frickin' Frack, also known as Jack and Evan Ingracia.
Alderwoman from the 15th.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'd like to have as my special guest today the members of St. Louis Should Vote Coalition up in the gallery today.
Alderman from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my special guest today Jeff Abusi of the Building and Construction Trades. Thank you.
Alderman from the 22nd.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my honored guest Ms. Mary One Johnson.
Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 10th like to wrap us up?
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, as we're gathered here on December 18th, which is National Bake a Cookie Day, in case you folks need something to do later. It was also on this day in 1966 when The Grinch Stole Christmas first aired on CBS, changing the Alderman from the 23rd's life forever. But more importantly, I do have with me two guests, two of my childhood friends, longtime Hill residents. On the left, Mr. Terry Tomlinson. On the right, Mr. Charlie O'Danny. Thank you.
Welcome, guys. Approval of the minutes.
We have none.
Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in sections A, B, and C of the agenda and have been placed in all Aldermen's mailboxes.
We'll dispense with line items 7 and 8. Would anyone like to take any board bills or resolutions off of any of our informal calendars? Would anyone like to take any board bills or resolutions off of any of our informal calendars? Alderman from the 5th, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to request that Resolution 142 as amendment be moved to the second reading calendar.
All right, Madam Clerk, please make a note of that change. Place Resolution 142 as amended on the second reading resolutions calendar.
So noted.
Any further changes? Any further changes? We would dispense with line item 9 and 10. First reading of board bills.
Board Bill 254, sponsored by Alderman Moore, an ordinance repealing Ordinance 70087 and in lieu thereof enacting a new ordinance prohibiting the issuance of any package or drink liquor license for any currently non-licensed premises within the boundaries of the 4th Ward Liquor Control District and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 255, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance approving an amendment to the Grand Center TIF redevelopment area plan, removing certain properties from the redevelopment area and containing a severability clause. That's the extent of our first readings.
Reference to committee.
To the Public Safety Committee, Board Bill 254, and to the Housing Committee, Board Bill 255. That's the extent of reference to committee.
Second reading.
Following board bills were reported out of the Streets Committee, Board Bill 127, sponsored by Alderman Moore, and ordinance directing the Director of Streets to establish the direction of Cottage Avenue as a one-way street eastbound from Cora to North Taylor. Board Bill 191, sponsored by Alderman Williamson, and ordinance directing the Director of Streets to temporarily close, barricade, or otherwise impede the flow of traffic on Arlington at Clemens 300 feet north of Enright and the northeast corner of Arlington to the northwest corner of Arlington and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 249, sponsored by Alderwoman Tyus, and ordinance authorizing and directing the street commissioner to take all necessary actions to honorarily designate the 5,000 to 5,400 blocks of Shreve between Bercher and West Florissant as the Reverend Donald Hunter Lane. That's the extent of our second reading.
We'll dispense with line items 14 through 16, third reading consent.
Board Bills 237 and 246.
Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion for the third reading consent calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for adoption of the third reading consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coulter. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderman Conway. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Williamson. 24 aye votes, 1 no vote.
By your vote, you stay in the motion. Alderman from the 18th and 3rd read and finally passed the aforementioned bills.
That's the extent of third reading consent.
Third reading, report of engrossments.
Board Bill 219, floor substitute, sponsored by Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderman Kotar, and Alderman Ortman, and ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment and the Board of Public Service, authorizing and directing the execution and delivery of a St. Louis Riverfront Stadium project financing, construction, and lease agreement by and among the city, the Regional Convention and Sports Complex Authority, and the state of Missouri, pertaining to the design, construction, financing, and leasing of a new professional sports facility, and containing an emergency clause and a severability clause.
Alderwoman from the 5th, you recognize on third reading, final passage of Board Bill number 219, floor substitute.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for final passage of Board Bill 219, floor substitute.
Been moved by the Alderwoman from the 5th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th. Alderwoman, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I stand in support of Board Bill 219. We all know that this has been a long, drawn-out process, but I'm confident and I can stand before you and I can say that myself, along with my co-sponsor, Jack Coder, and Alderman Ortman, have worked hard with many other members of the Board of Aldermen to try to push this forward. It hasn't been an ideal situation. We have been under the thumb of other entities, but I think that we all stood and took the charge because we know where this could lead us. And if you couple this stadium with the fact that we may possibly get NGA, total those are $2 billion developments. That is something that has been unprecedented in this city for a long time. I know that there was a lot of strife back and forth on the public vote, and unfortunately we just didn't have time to do it, but I think that we all were elected to come down here and be leaders, and I think that we all have studied this long and hard. The numbers have been complicated. They have been forever changing. But I can stand before you today and say that I think we're making a move in the right direction. In addition to that, this is the first time that I have really seen a stride like this at the Board of Aldermen, where some of my colleagues who I often differ with, we all sat down and really tried to do the best that we could to make this the best bill. And with that being said, our minority inclusion plan, which is something that the Alderman from the 21st worked very hard on, and the Alderman from the 27th, and of course you too, President Reed and Sam Moore, and it's never that often that we're all on the same page at the same time, but I think that we, believe that in order to turn some things around in this town, we have to create opportunities. I feel that this bill does that. When you think about 3,000 construction jobs, not just jobs, careers that are give people throughout the city who may otherwise take a different turn, it'll give them an opportunity to be productive and to lead stable lives, then I think that this is something that we should definitely fight for. Once again, I said we don't know what may really happen with it, but I'll stand before you saying that as the sponsor of the bill, I feel that we have made some good decisions to put us in a favorable consideration to move forward. And I just ask for your continued support of this bill. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alderwoman. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I rise in support of Board Bill 219, floor substitute. I'd like to thank my colleague from the 5th Ward for her leadership on this, and also my colleague from the 9th, Kenny Ortman, another co-sponsor of this legislation. This board bill authorizes the construction, finance, and lease agreement of the proposed Riverfront Stadium. If this project happens, it has the ability to create 3,000 construction jobs and the potential for many construction careers in the building trades. If this project happens, it has the potential to revitalize the North Riverfront, and it will also create 2,600 or retain 2,600 game day jobs. If this project happens, the city's contribution will be capped at roughly $150 million. We will not be on the hook for construction cost overruns, That will fall on the authority and the team. And if this project happens, the Regional Sports Authority will be responsible for backstopping any rebated taxes that fall short. I say if this project happens because there's still a big if. We're all very excited about the potential of keeping our football team. We all worked very hard on this bill. There's been some great press over the last few days. And then about 12 hours ago, we got a letter from the NFL commissioner reminding all of us that there's a lot of ifs. We can't guarantee any money from the NFL. We can't guarantee any money from an NFL team owner. And I've been clear on that from the beginning, and I think most of the people pushing this project have been clear on that. All we can do is guarantee what our position in this deal is. And our position is we'll put up $150 million in an effort to keep this town an NFL city. The rest of it's out of our hands. The rest of it's up to 32 league billionaires. It's not up to Roger Goodell. It's up to the owners of the NFL teams who get a vote in this matter. And so I would ask my colleagues to please pass this bill today to show the NFL and those owners that we're serious about remaining an NFL city, that we're serious about building this stadium on our front door, and to show the NFL management and Stan Kroenke that we're not going to be pushed around, that we've got a legitimate offer here, that we've got a substantial offer, and we've got a solid offer, and that we want to be an NFL city. So I'd ask you all to please vote for final passage of Board Bill 219, floor substitute. I'm happy to answer any questions about the finance agreement. I'm sure the Alderman from the 24th has many. Thanks.
Alderman from the 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have that many. Don't run away. I'm not going to talk that long. I did want to ask if the Alderwoman from the 5th would yield.
Alderman from the 5th will yield for questioning to the Alderman from the 24th.
Sure.
Alderman from the 24th, please proceed.
Thank you. I just want to go to Exhibit D, which is the proposed project sources and uses page. I just want to point out what I would consider major change that was introduced on my desk at 10:02 on Tuesday morning during the meeting in the floor sub, the proposed use of funds. We've been talking about a $1 billion stadium, I suppose, since we started this. When the bill was introduced in October, it was a $1 billion stadium, or $984 million or something. And then the price went up a little bit a couple weeks ago, but then on Tuesday, the price went up by $100 million on Tuesday. We added $100 million to the cost of the stadium in the last week that this was before us. Specifically, stadium construction went from $823 million to $917 million. This question didn't come up on Tuesday, but from Thursday, when we approved this in committee, until Tuesday, how do we come up with the requirement for $94 million of construction for the stadium, additional? More than a 10% increase in just a few days over the weekend.
It's my understanding how it explained to me, and keep in mind that I haven't been sitting at the table negotiating these numbers because that's outside of my capacity that I'm elected to do. But it was my understanding that that additional money came about because there was some concerns that there may be cost overruns. And when I was told that, then, you know, it was just explained to me that it wouldn't be any additional burden on the city. It would be that the NFL would be putting those dollars in. So, I mean, it was a last-minute decision. We literally did get it at 10 o'clock at night or so. I was informed of it shortly before. And like I said, myself and my co-sponsor, we're not sitting at the table divvying these numbers up. So I think your question would probably be better suited for the people who are actually negotiating the numbers.
That's you know, I agree with you 100% there. And in fact, I invited them to come, of course, day after day. I sent them emails. I made phone calls to the RSA office, to everybody that had a phone number in the RSA office, and left them messages. And yet they never appeared before a committee. So I haven't, sadly, and I would have liked the opportunity, I have not had the opportunity to directly ask that question. It just seems, it seems kind of incredible that we've paid over $13 million now to have this project developed and estimated. And over the weekend, somebody, we don't know who. None of us can answer the question, apparently. But somebody just threw an additional $94 million into construction cost, bumping the cost up by over 10% after we've supposed to have been spending the whole year developing and estimating the cost of the stadium. You know, how do we, the board, not deserve an answer to what that $94 million is when it comes at the 11th hour, and all the media, all the press from everybody pushing this thing has been saying billion-dollar stadium, and then, well, I guess it's a $1.1 billion stadium. So thank you. Would the Alderman from the 7th yield to questions?
Alderman from the 7th will yield for question to the Alderman from the 24th.
Yes.
Alderman from the 24th, please proceed.
Alderman, your name's on the bill.
Yes, it is.
You know, the best part of this job is that now and then we do something that is important. You know, a lot of the job is mundane, as you know, but occasionally we are advancing a measure that has an impact. Put our name on that, and I think we got to own it, right? All our eyes are on you right now. It's like a Tupac album. So when this goes forward, I mean, you're gonna live with this, right? We've got right now what purports to be the worst lease terms that any city has ever agreed to with the NFL.
I would agree with that. I don't know
Okay.
if that's a question, but we have pretty lousy lease terms right now.
Okay, well, that's good. Something we agree on. And I brought up in the past that a big hole in the bill, there's probably a lot of things we disagree on in the bill, but something that we may actually sort of agree on is that there's a big question mark about the lease terms within the bill. We don't know what the lease payment will be to the RSA for an NFL team to use the stadium.
That's correct. We do not know the lease terms currently. We do know that it is a minimum of $1.5 million growing at 3% annually. But no, I mean, I can't tell you what the lease terms are going to be because we're not negotiating with a team that's willing to negotiate right now.
Sure, which puts us in a tough situation.
Yes.
So I brought this up, you know, on Tuesday. I just went back and looked at the hearing. So I'm going to refer us back to the November 12th Ways and Means Committee hearing and just a short exchange between myself and Mr. Peacock. So I say, we're talking about this issue, the fact that the lease terms are not in the bill we're approving, and that we won't have a chance to approve them later on. It's out of our hands once we pass the bill. So I say, just to make it crystal clear, let's agree that a team should make a $10 million a year lease payment just for the sake of argument, okay? Mr. Peacock says, great, I'd love that. I'm all for it. I say, owner says $4 million. Take it or leave it. Mr. Peacock says, okay, we're done. If the 10 is what's required, by the way, in Minnesota, they pay 10. So Minnesota just completed what's the most comparable sort of stadium funding package that we have to go off of in a comparable market. It's only 2 years old. The stadium will open, I think, next season, I believe. And like us, they had kind of a stadium that the team didn't like anymore. You know, their roof collapsed and they had to do something, and the team owner, you know, made the same threat to leave, to go to LA, and they worked something out. The state contributed, the city of Minneapolis contributed, the owners contributed, yada, yada, yada. But the team owner signed a lease with the Minneapolis or the Minnesota Stadium Authority to make a lease payment of $10 million a year that actually also escalates at 3%. So what Minneapolis got just up the river is $10 million a year. Over 35 years, the value of that $10 million with the 3% escalation in the lease is $605 million. So Ziggy Wolf and his partners that own the Minnesota Vikings are going to pay their stadium authority $605 million to lease the space, play the games, and also to maintain the space. Built into that $10 million is a preservation payment that starts at $1.5 million and grows at 3% as well. What we've got here, we've got this idea that we won't go below 1.5 million. But we know 1.5 million isn't enough. It's not enough even to maintain the current Edward Jones Dome. Right now we've got $4 million in preservation payments annual for the Edward Jones Dome, and we've learned that that hasn't actually quite cut it over time. So we know and I was told by the CBC that they believe the absolute bare bones minimum cost to maintain the dome with no upgrades over time is $2.8 million per year. $2.8 million per year. And all we're asking for, and that's today, of course, that's not 30 years from now. And all we're asking for in this lease is $1.5 million a year. It seems to me that everybody who has been a proponent of this project has actually already agreed that $1.5 million is not sufficient to cover the costs of maintenance and upkeep. Maybe $5-6 million lease, maybe that would do it, but we know it's not $1.5 million. So the question is, go back to my previous statement, why do you want to live with this thing? Your name is on this thing. Why do you want to go forward allowing us to enter into another terrible lease that is not adequate to cover the cost of this facility over the long haul? Now I've got the amendment made up. I can't introduce this because I voted no last week, but anybody in the room that voted yes can vote to reconsider that vote. We have this idea that once we get to the third reading calendar, we can't go backwards, but in fact we can. Anybody can make a motion to reconsider. We can amend the bill. I'll ask for one amendment. Just that we amend that lease term to an adequate amount. Vikings pay $10 million. How about we pay $8 million? So that this is our last bite at the apple, so that we, the city, taxpayers know that we'll have a revenue stream that is sufficient to pay for maintenance of this facility over time. The difference between what we're asking for and what Minneapolis got over 35 years, it's $500 million. $500 million in lease payments. $500 million that we know is going to be required because Dave Peacock told us that. In committee, he told us $4 million's not going to cut it. Now certainly $1.5 million's not going to cut it. Now I know this will be an inconvenience. We'll all have to come back on Tuesday. But isn't $500 million of lease payments worth us being inconvenienced for an hour next week? So I'm gonna ask. I can't make the motion. I'm gonna ask you or another person that voted on the prevailing side. If you do it, it'll pass. So you're in the driver's seat. You make the motion and say we ought to amend this to ask for a reasonable and financially responsible amount. We tie the RSA's hands a little bit so that they can't enter into another terrible lease agreement that messes us up 20 and 30 years down the road. We do that, you and I and everybody in the room can go back and say, you know what, there's probably a lot of things we don't agree on in this bill. But at least we know that whoever the team is, they'll be paying their fair share over time, and we won't be stuck backfilling, making preservation payments out of who knows where to keep the stadium functional. Minneapolis just got that deal. Why are we asking for so much less than a peer city in the Midwest that just came to a similar agreement, just went through a similar process? So this is a question. Will you make the motion? This is our last chance. This is our last chance to fix it.
Well, Alderman, I appreciate your comments. I will not make that motion. I think one of the things you've left out of this conversation is that in that section you're referring to with the $1.5 million, that's simply the minimum. That's a starting point. That's a floor. We're not negotiating with the team right now over the lease terms. When we actually get to that point, I think we're all in agreement, you included, that $1.5 million is not enough. And I would hope that we're not going to enter into a final agreement with a team assuming we have a team, that won't cover the costs of the stadium. So right now, no, I will not make that motion.
All right. Well, I think you and I were not elected to hand over financial responsibility for the city to a third party. I think we got to put our best foot forward here. Now, I can't, how about $4 million? Where should we start the bidding? We know that if we set that number low, we're not going to get a good deal. We're starting out negotiating from a position of weakness, and we can make that position better. The other thing is, I think 8's the right number. If we say 8, and the team says, you know what, we can't do 8, but we'll do 6, we can always come back and amend it. But if we don't start higher, we may get $1.5 million, and we may be saddling ourselves and future residents of the city with $500 million more, $500 million in additional liability compared to the deal Minneapolis just made. So, look, we got until the vote to make that motion. The facts are right in front of us. 17 people voted in the affirmative on Tuesday. Any of you can go down in St. Louis history as fixing this problem that we all know is a real problem. Somebody should do it. I'll wrap it up here in a second. I would just say that whether we agree or disagree that this is a good idea, and perhaps reasonable people can agree and disagree, and that's fine. What I am very troubled by is the way in which we're getting over the finish line. The way that we get a substitute bill dropped on our desks that makes the correct number was 440 changes happened between Thursday and Tuesday. 440 changes happened over the weekend. Now, if we know what we're voting on, we can go out and we can say, look, I took a vote because I understood what was in there, and so be it. Maybe I was right, maybe I was wrong, but I considered all the details, and this is where I came down. But I don't know how we can make that argument when there's 440 changes and the bill is dropped on your desk the same day that you have to take a vote on it. If we, as we continue to operate this way and continue to let people get away with this, we just indicate that, you know what, this is okay. You can make any number of changes you want at the last minute, forget everything that happened in committee, forget the whole committee process, because everything we talked about in committee was, as far as we know, was probably wiped away with this floor substitute. So who the hell knows what we were talking about for all those hours in committee? Now, we occupy, people have invested a lot of time and money in getting this project to where it is. Local architecture firm, local engineering firms, the stadium task force, et cetera, et cetera. But none of those people, none of those groups occupy the position that we occupy. They have a single mission, which is figure out how to get this done. We have a different relationship with residents and voters, and quite frankly, a different responsibility, which is to say, is this a good idea? Not can it be done, but is it the right thing to do? And I don't know how we can make that decision when we don't know what we're voting on. As the alderman from the 11th said last week, trust but verify. It's not that I distrust any of the people working on this. It's just that I know it's my job to understand it before voting on it. And I can't do that when I don't know what's in the bill until the last second. Now, I believe that this got 17 votes on Tuesday. Personally, I don't believe that there are actually 17 people here who think this is a good idea. That's based on what people have told me over the last couple months. So why are we moving ahead with it? Why are we accepting a deal that's not financially sound for our city? You know, saying no isn't saying no to everything. Saying no is saying yes to a city with more money to do other things 10 or 15 years down the road. It's not no, no, no. It's yes to all the other things we need to do. Yes to taking care of our other responsibilities. Yes to paying off debts we've already created. Yes to having the financial flexibility to do something important 5, 10, or 15 years down the road. So vote no because it's a vote for a lot of other things in our city's future. It's the responsible vote to take. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Alderman from the 6th, please proceed.
I'd prefer to wait until I can be heard.
Okay. Alderman from the 19th. All right. Would you guys remove them from the gallery?
They sound good. They sound good.
Actually, it was really good. Alderman
sir.
from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I am currently standing because I need to say what I've been saying all along, just one more time. Okay, actually, they did sound very good. And I appreciate it.
They were on tune, too. So you gotta give it to them.
I don't know how many times I've said this, but we are in a negotiating mode. This bill will not make a final decision for this project. This bill allows, even if it wasn't written in the bill, the city charter says that our comptroller is the check and balances on leases and financing for the city of St. Louis. Our comptroller is going to stay on top of this. We get out of our lanes too many times. This is not our job to negotiate a lease and try to figure out what the dollar, that's not our job. And that's why this bill is so complicated right now, because we got too busy and too messy. And until we understand how to stay in our lane, we will continue to be in these situations. And to continue to say about something you received at 11:30 at night for the next day, during the minimum wage process, we received it in an hour or two before we were about to debate it. So that happens down here all the time. So I don't want the public to think that there was something different done from how we do business all the time. That's why we are allowed to do floor substitutes. While we're in the middle of debates, we can amend something here in the chambers. So I want the public, especially my public that's listening, because you've been talking to me. Mr. President, I'm going to ask for a point of order and ask for the upper chamber to be cleared in order to do business.
I tell you, can the officers up there just clear this whole upper chambers? Because
we got a lot of business
we have a lot of business to take care of today. Please clear the chambers. Let's clear the chambers.
Okay.
Please proceed. I'm happy to let some, hold on for a second. Shh. Everybody hold down for a second. Hold on for a second.
If the officers can identify.
Hold on for a second, because if you can't even let me get this out, then you need to get out. You need to move on right now. I agree. I think it's important for people to stay here to be able to be heard. If you're going to just try to disrupt the meeting and everything, I'm just going to ask you to step out right now and save yourself and the rest of this chamber some time. If you want to stay, listen to the debate, clap and that kind of thing, that's great. That's what we need you to do. So if that's what your intention is, stay, please, and clap and engage in the debate, engage in that way. But really don't try to just overrun the meeting today, because that's unproductive. All right? So let's do that. So anybody that is planning to just overrun the meeting, you can step out. The ones who really want to stay and listen to the debate, clap, you can do all that stuff, and just please stay. Thank you. All right, thank you all.
All right, thank you. So I want to go back to understanding the process. Only in the last week have you really heard anything that was anywhere near, I am talking to you and I'm considering something, from the various entities. But until a decision is made on whether or not the Rams stay or a new team comes, or whether or not we just simply don't build a stadium, there's no numbers for you to negotiate, because first of all, that's not your role. We have a very competent and qualified comptroller who has protected this city over a number of years, brought our credit rating up, made sure that we paid our bills on time, and took care of all of our city property. So at the end of the day, that's the only one I want negotiating a contract and a lease for me. I don't want you negotiating it, because you don't know what you're doing. You don't even understand it. So I am standing here to continue to support the opportunity for us to get to that point for negotiations, so that our qualified, competent comptroller can sit there at the table with these guys and say, this is what we need, this is the dollar amount I'm dealing with, this is what I see, and if you don't like it, go home. She has the power to do that, and that's the only person who has all the numbers and all the information in order to make that decision. And so going back to change something, going back to committee, all of that, what is that going to get us? That's going to get us nothing. Currently, we have approximately 18 to 19 days before the final decision will be made. We don't know what that's going to be. We may end up with nothing. But if you're not smart enough to put the tool in place in order to negotiate to have something when that time comes, then you have a problem. I don't want to take over the position of the comptroller. I got enough to do, okay? And I don't know how to do it. Because again, she has all the information. Not what you go online, not snippets from brief conversations that you get, and then you take the numbers and flip them and do all kinds of crazy things with them that make no common sense. This is business, people. This is not about your how do I want to say it? Your need to control something. This is business. This is serious business. And we need to stay in our lanes as legislators and provide the policy and tools in order for this to happen or not happen. Because we do have the process in place to protect us in the end. And I've been watching this comptroller for a long time, long before I came down here. And she's done a very good job. That's why she's the highest citywide vote getter in St. Louis City, because people trust her and she protects and takes care of our money. So at the end of the day, we can talk another 5 hours if you want to. But I believe that most people sitting in this room today know what is needed, pass the tool in order to move forward and be prepared when the real negotiations start. And if we don't like it, this comptroller says, no, I'm done. I'm done, because she knows. She knows what we need, and she will get that for us, and she will protect us in the end. Now, everything else you're talking about is just talk, because you're not in the position to make the kinds of decisions that you have raised to the public, that you've gotten people all excited unnecessarily so, that you have created an atmosphere that is not necessary. You know, this world has enough stress on it already. And to create another way for people to be unhappy and disillusioned is unfair. It is just unfair. Nobody in this room, when I'm talking about legislators, have the power to sign a check or a lease. They don't have the power to negotiate a lease. The charter doesn't allow that. So everybody needs to just calm down and stay in your lane, and let's move this tool forward and let the people who are in those positions negotiate on our behalf, if there's any reason to negotiate, because we still don't know that yet. It may not ever even be a reason to negotiate. So let's just move past it and give everybody an opportunity to calm down, because I have seen some things that made me very unhappy from people that I know very well in this town, and it's because they had misinformation. And once we sat down and we talked about all of it, and they understood how the process works for the city of St. Louis, they felt much better about it, much, much better about it, because they thought that we had the power sitting in this room with this document that was all be all, and that's how it was going to be, but it is not. So I just don't understand why we're still going over the same things over and over again. We can do better. We can do better, and we need to recognize and tell the truth to the public. Thank you, Mr. President.
Madam Comptroller. Also, thanks for joining us today, Madam Comptroller.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. President and Honorable Board. I stand to make a comment on the board bill that you're considering to build the stadium. First off, on Wednesday at the E&A meeting, I voted no. And that's a very important vote, and I stand here today to tell you why. The board bill that's before you does not have a cap when it comes to the outlay of the city budget. That's very important to note. Number two, there is no guaranteed minimum revenues that we receive from the project in order to pay the debt service that we are going to be asked to issue, the bonds that we're going to be asked to issue. Therefore, as comptroller, I say that the board bill before you today is not fiscally responsible. Secondly, had I had the opportunity to vote for this bill, the project, football, the stadium separately, my vote for retaining a football team in the city of St. Louis and the St. Louis region would have been yes. I am a fan, and I was at the game yesterday, and I'm glad we won. All right? All right. However, because the bill before you is not fiscally responsible, and that is the only vote that came before me on Wednesday at the Board of E&A, my choice had to be no, because I'm charged with, in my job as comptroller, to protect the taxpayers. So I voted no. But I do want to commend the Honorable Board President for upgrading the minority participation in the board bill. Thank you, Mr. President. You've upgraded the minority participation to reflect the city of St. Louis and its diversity. Thank you for that. I also want to commend you on implementing into the board bill the quick pay. The Quick Pay program that you're implementing, I created and developed 20 years ago as comptroller when we were embarking on the city of St. Louis's first billion-dollar project, which was the runway at Lambert International Airport. It was very important that our minority participating contractors were going to be paid in a timely manner so that they could not only have the opportunity to participate in the program, such the size of building a runway, a billion-dollar runway, that they could get paid in a timely manner and stay in business and perhaps grow. So as we look to embark on a next billion-dollar project, if in fact this occurs, then certainly those who are in labor, those hard-working families, and of course the minority participants on the project deserve nothing less than a quick pay program. So I stand to commend you on bringing this back after 20 years, a program that I developed to help minority contractors. Okay? And I've had a display here because this is board here that my PIO is going to hold up and let everyone see. When I came into office in 1995 and charged with taking on all kinds of major projects, the number one item on the board is the Fast Pay program. It's what we termed it in 1995. So now it's called Quick Pay. I developed it. I want to thank you, Mr. Board President, for bringing it back because labor, hardworking families, and our diversified community deserve nothing less than the best that we can bring to them because this is a labor town.
Thank you.
And again, one more comment as I am seated is to say to this honorable board that you can make the financing better. If we are to cap the outlays from the city budget or even bring some minimum income from the activities at the stadium if it's built, minimum incomes to pay off debt service would certainly go a long way to protect our taxpayers, to keep our city strong and vital. And it'll also not only be strong and vital, but it will be a destination that not only the surrounding folks in the region would want to come to, Mr. Board President, but people from around the nation. Thank you, Honorable Board, for listening. And you all have happy, happy holidays this season. And may God bless you.
All right, thank you, Madam Comptroller. Alderman from the 25th.
Sorry, Mr. President. I believe the Alderwoman from the 6th was standing, and I think you may have recognized her before we were interrupted by the gallery.
Yeah, and she took a pass on it. Do you want to yield right now?
May I yield to the Alderwoman
from the 6th.
The Alderman from the 25th, I appreciate that. I just want to say, I guess, to all the board, to recapitulate for the record, while our comptroller may have the financial interest of the city in mind and may vote in a manner that the city residents and some of us here at the board would like for her to vote, there are two other votes on the Board of Estimate and Apportionment that are in favor of this and could possibly overrule her vote regardless of whether or not we entrust our intentions to her or not. I also want to make certain that people understand that no matter how we play the shell game, if it's the RSA that's on the hook for extra cost, if it's the state, if it's the board, no matter who it is, at the end of the day, it's St. Louis City taxpayers and it's state of Missouri taxpayers. The RSA has no money of their own. It is a pass-through funded through taxes. I've spoken literally to zero municipal bond analysts or zero economists who think that the proposal that we have before us makes any financial sense to the city. We are already dipping into general revenue $2 million a year for this team because we do not make enough money to pay for the team that we currently have and the dome we currently have. Now we're going to be on the hook another 35 years with a bad deal and a dome that we don't know how to take care of. I just want to make sure for the record that people know that I'm very disappointed that the voters have been circumvented in this process, as well as our state representatives. There was a responsible way to do this. There was a responsible way to fund stadiums. We are not doing it here at the board today. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman from the 25th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today, earlier this week, I think I exhausted kind of my ideological differences on this issue than some of obviously the majority of my colleagues that are down here. But for those that are here and for those that are watching, I just have to reiterate not only what my colleagues from the 24th and 6th Ward have said, but also my personal endeavor to try and make this a better bill. One of the things that I was under the impression was actually going to happen in our last meeting, which did not happen in our last meeting, was putting in some sort of a requirement for the practice facility and headquarters for the team to be located in the city of St. Louis. This bill is publicly subsidizing billionaires, and we have St. Louis County, which is not participating in the financing structure of debt for this stadium, and yet they have the opportunity right now to relocate their headquarters and practice facility. That practice facility and headquarters is currently out in Earth City, out in St. Louis County. We did not put a stipulation in this board bill that requires or has any minimum monocle of requirement for them to relocate those facilities into the city. I understand, based off of conversations with the mayor's office, that they are going to still plan on moving forward with getting the practice facility to be located in the city of St. Louis and/or the headquarters. But I think we had a real opportunity as a board to put that into a requirement as part of the lease agreement with the new stadium, and we did not do that. And I feel like that is just low-hanging fruit that we are not taking advantage of. And frankly, I think that some people will argue that it hampers our negotiations with the NFL to do something like that. This is our bargaining chip. This is what the city of St. Louis wants. This is our best offer that we're putting forward. And frankly, I'm disappointed in that offer. I wish that we could have gotten to this place in a more cohesive fashion, and with a broader support, not only from members of the Board of Aldermen, but also from the general public. I think that we've really abandoned our voters in this situation, and I understand the need for expediency when it comes to negotiations and sometimes, but really I think we could have done a lot better on this deal for the voters of the city of St. Louis, and I really hope that someone takes my colleague from the 24th's offer who voted on the prevailing side last week to reconsider, so that we can address some of the issues that Madam Comptroller brought to us. And for those of us that believe that she is the fiscal stalwart for the city, she just told us to vote no. So I think that that's something that we need to consider for anyone who's saying that she watches the credit rating for this city. She's making sure that we're vital and fiscally sound. She's telling us that this is not a good deal right now. She's not saying that we need to go back to the drawing board either. She's saying that there are simple things that we can do right now in order to address those. And I believe my colleague from the 24th Ward actually brought up a good point as well. So I see no reason. I know the holidays are fast approaching, but it's not unheard of for us to come back into resumed regular meetings. So I, for one, am happy to come back next week and continue this conversation. I can't speak for the other 28 members that are here, but I do think that right now we're not putting ourselves in our best foot forward in this negotiation. And I know many are going to disagree with that, but I just think that we can do better.
All right, thanks. Alderman from the 28th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would you request the Alderman from the 25th, see if he would yield?
Alderman from the 25th will yield for question to the Alderman from the 28th.
I will.
All right, Alderman from the 28th, please proceed.
Thank you. I heard you speaking about how you wish there had been some things considered at our last meeting, but I don't believe you offered any amendments at the last meeting. What is up with that?
So I had actually grabbed an amendment that put in language for a practice facility from the mayor's legislative director. The language in that amendment was different than what we had discussed the night before. And that it was weaker and did not have a specific requirement. It said if they choose to relocate, that we would put forth a development package, incentive package for a practice facility. The language I had discussed previously with the mayor's office and Dave Peacock was a requirement, and that we would also put forth, the best development package, within the region, which I do believe that the city would have a foot up in that regard because we have a lot more to bargain with than other municipalities around the city.
But if I might add, we don't have to rely on the administration to offer amendments.
Correct,
Okay.
but
That's all. I guess
I
that's
gave that amendment to the alderman from the 7th Ward, and he said that he would introduce it, and he did not.
Okay, thanks.
Any further discussion, any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. What we have before us here today is an ordinance authorizing and directing the execution and delivery of a St. Louis Riverfront Stadium project construction and lease agreement with the City of St. Louis, the Regional Convention and Sports Complex Authority, the RSA, and the state. We're the city, we know what the state is, but who is the RSA? I'd like to ask the Alderwoman from the 5th to yield for questions.
Alderwoman from the 5th, will you yield for question to the Alderman from the 20th?
No, I will not. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Alderman from the 20th, you may want to ask the Alderman from the 7th.
Well, I guess I'll go down. So I'd like to ask
the Alderman from the 7th.
The Alderman from the 9th, another sponsor of the bill. Would he like to yield for? He's not in here.
Alderman.
Okay, I'll go with the 7th. Alderman from the 7th, would you like to yield for questions?
Alderman from the 7th, will you yield for question to Alderman?
Happily. Sorry, I was in the back.
Alderman from the 20th, please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman from the 7th, have you met with the RSA since Tuesday? As of Tuesday, you hadn't met with the RSA.
No, I know we talked about this earlier in the week. I still have not met with the RSA.
You haven't met with the RSA. Okay. And do we know now who the members of the RSA are?
No, still don't know. I still know
who
Jim Shrewsbury is the chair, but I don't know the other
Shrewsbury.
members. Yeah.
Okay. Do we know how many members serve on the RSA?
No, but I'm guessing you can tell me.
I can't because I also haven't met with the RSA.
Okay.
Do we know if anybody on this board has met with the RSA? No. Okay. According to their website, there are 11 members, and what I understand is that 3 of them, again, are appointed by the county. And we established last Tuesday that the county doesn't participate in the payment of this financial agreement. Has there been any attempt by this board to encourage or mandate in any way that the county participate in the financial agreement for this proposal?
No.
Has there been any attempt by this board or any negotiating entity on behalf of the city to remove the county from being able to appoint members to this authority?
So as a board here in the city, we don't have any authority over the RSA in that capacity, but in my conversations with the governor and his staff and others involved in this project, I think if this thing comes to fruition, it would make sense to go to the legislature and say, hey, county, you're not needed on the RSA anymore since you're not helping pay for this thing.
But we haven't made any attempts to do that at this point, correct?
No, we have not.
Okay. So the RSA has not come before this board. However, on Tuesday, as we deliberated here, the RSA, let me ask this. Have they supplied any official documentation to this board? Financial statements, letters, or anything of that nature? A letter, a direct communication to the board?
No, not to my knowledge.
So on Tuesday, as we deliberated here, the RSA, to my knowledge, had provided a letter to the state Missouri Development Finance Board, whom they were requesting a $3 million loan from. They not only provided a letter, but they participated in that conversation via conference call, participated in some meaningful way in conversation with that board. And they haven't come before us in any way, shape, or form. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So have you seen any financial statements from the RSA?
No.
No. Are they under any obligation to share their financial statements with us?
I don't know.
The most recent financial statement I can find on their website was from 2013, which is almost 2 years old. Do we have any idea how much the RSA has spent on this proposal so far?
I believe they spent just north of $10 million, give or take.
Do we know where that money came from? Where it originated?
I do not. I am not an expert on the RSA nor its finances. I
Okay.
don't know the answer to that.
Do we know the RSA deal, how much we came short, how much the tax projected taxes to repay the bonds from the dome, how much we came short in the city and how much the city had to come up with out of general revenue to pay those?
I believe, you mean the difference between what we take in, well, yeah, I believe it's about $2 million, I think is the answer to your question.
So the RSA had profits of upwards of $10 million to come up with this, or money sitting in the bank, and meanwhile the city still had to contribute $2 million of general revenue to meet our general obligation bonds. Is that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
So if I understand correctly, is this deal going to be something similar where the RSA can have profits without having to answer to any shortfalls or any less than expected tax dollar revenue from this project?
I don't know the answer to that, sorry.
Okay. Lastly, my question, have you spoken with Stan Kroenke or the NFL directly?
No, but I'd love to.
Do we have any indication that they're interested in this proposal?
Well, judging by Mr. Kroenke's statements, I don't think he's terribly interested in this right now, but that could change after the NFL's meeting in January.
So we have no idea if we're negotiating with an entity that's not even participating in the negotiations. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I've been clear about that, I believe, in my remarks, and as of many others. We're not negotiating with a team right now.
I have to stand before this board and say I'm not very excited about those types of negotiations. I want to get behind a big project, $1 billion project, one that puts our people to work. We have an unemployment rate in the city of St. Louis 3 times the national average. In the 20th ward, that's 4 times the national average. We need jobs for our folks. We need big projects that can bring those jobs, union jobs, something like the MetroLink, another $1 billion project that I could get behind. But I'm going to have to stand up here in support of Madam Comptroller's very clear warnings of the financial pitfalls involved in this project. This is a 15% subsidy to a $100 billion industry, the NFL, to a team owner who has a net personal worth of $6.3 million. Excuse me, $3 billion.
Yeah,
thank you.
That's
Thank you,
a
Mr.
big
President.
number.
$6.3 billion worth.
Yeah.
As an alderman who represents an area with a lot of small businesses, I can only imagine what the small businesses in my ward could do with a 15% subsidy. And so therefore, again, I urge the rest of this board to vote no today. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman from the 1st.
Mr. President, again, I want to thank you for not putting the people out.
No, thanks for pointing it out. I appreciate
and
it.
also because some past times we haven't even allowed them to clap. But I really just want to thank you because I don't think you should punish everybody. You should punish the people who are doing it. So I appreciate you reconsidering that.
Well, from my vantage point, I can't see it.
I know,
so I didn't know
but she asked for everybody to be cleared, and so I'm glad. But they can't up there. They knew who did it, okay? That's what they're up there for. I'm saying the police up there and the marshals know who were the people, and that's who you should. I'm glad that we should just remove those if they don't ask, right? Not everyone.
Right, thanks.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'm sorry, Mr. President, I'd ask if the alderman from the 21st would yield, please.
Alderman from the 21st will yield for question to the alderwoman from the 1st.
Yes.
Thank you, Alderman. I want to go to section 4, which is the thing that I'm excited about, which is the minority inclusion and all the great things that you all included in the board bill.
Section 4 of
which is on page 9 of 20, section 4.
Gotcha.
And that's all the things that you talked about making sure that there was minority inclusion. All right. Maybe I have the wrong.
Page 11?
I got 4.
Are you looking at page 11 of 20?
Is it the 4 substitute? That's the one. That's the correct one, right? Page 9, I'm talking about section 4, the workforce inclusion.
Yeah, my copy is page 11, the beginning of section 4, but the language should be the same as the floor substitute.
Okay. We seem to have a couple of copies out here. Same dates, different bad time. I don't know. So, is this your copy? Okay, well, whatever the page is, we seem to have a confusion. I got a different copy, got the same date on it, just wrong pages. So, but anyway, so, and your page is 11. But anyway, it's about section 4.
Okay.
My first question is, did you put all of these things in committee, or were some of these things included with the floor substitute that we got Tuesday, depending on who you were? I got mine at 11:30 at night, but some people didn't get theirs to maybe the next morning. Were all of these in there from the committee?
So Section 4 was included at the committee level. In the floor substitute, there were some minor changes to Section 4.
Okay.
Most notably, the inclusion of the license collector's office.
Okay. So you didn't have a time to talk about how that would affect the license collector, or if it would affect her, if she would need to hire more people or anything like that?
No, I didn't include that section. That was at the request of one of the attorneys that had been working with the president's office.
Okay.
But I think they felt there was an additional mechanism to make sure that there was a penalty if this was not followed.
I did talk to the Madam License Collector, and she said she had spoken to someone, and she had agreed that she could do that. And my questions, along with the Alderman from the 22nd, had been, you know, because when we put things in a board bill, if it affects them financially, do we then increase their employment? Do we increase their budget? How do we handle that? And I had some questions from her about what would she do? Was that there just for the people to go to be able to look it up and see these are the people who are on this list? Was there some enforcement mechanism behind it or anything like that? But you didn't put it in, so I guess you didn't get to negotiate quite how she would do it, right?
No, I didn't work on the language with the license collector. I think, though, that from my understanding and reading of the additions, what it would just mean is that she would be one of the agencies that would also receive the data that was prepared for, I think, 4 other agencies as well. And she would be charged with, if the third-party consultant determines that those agreed-upon goals were not met and that they would be disqualified from future projects, the license collector would also have a role in possibly stripping them of their business license.
Which we have to be very careful of, because they are county offices and not ours. We really cannot tell them what to do. We can ask and request, because there's a lot of things we could have done with license collector, collective revenue, and other offices that are county offices, but we really don't have the ability to direct them. We can request them. Is that your understanding?
Direct them, yes, that is my understanding. So again, they would be one of many parties that receive this data. I think one of the things that we did want to do, though, is I think one of the failures in the past of having effective minority participation is actual penalties for not doing it, not living up to these agreed-upon goals. And as you noted last week, there's often been court challenges to try to strip away some of these efforts. And so what we've done in this one is actually put several different layers. And so even if, worst-case scenario, there was a lawsuit successful to strip away one, there would be others.
Okay. And so can you just go over again all the great things that you put in there? Just a little summary, please.
Oh, you want me to go over Section 4?
Yeah. Pat your back. Because after all, you said you guys had this great, you didn't know, I guess, that this was the 5th one. And so you have to ask the question, what happened to the other 4? And I can tell you that answer. But this 5th one maybe worked. So tell me some of the great things that you did.
Okay. So let me start with the mechanism. So a lot of the things that you're talking about in the past, as far as the city trying to set high minority participation goals on city projects, there is a certain threshold, as you talked about legally, when we try to set goals, and some would say set-asides, on government projects. Now, our mechanism for this, though, is to, as the funding agency, to say to the RSA that they can only receive our funds if certain contingencies are met. Among those contingencies are that the NFL agrees to put in X number of millions of dollars, that the state agrees to put in X numbers of millions of dollars. And we added a contingency that their contract must include these minority participation goals Otherwise, the comptroller does not have to give them the money. And so it's actually the RSA who would have these contracting goals for their contractor. So that's a different mechanism, and it's also a different threshold. Okay. In the past, as well, as you mentioned, we have not been successful sometimes because there has not been the backing of a disparity study to prove that we actually have the ability in the city to reach these goals. We have a fresh disparity study. We have included goals based on that disparity study specifically. So that's included in there. And if you want to go over some of the goals.
Can I just correct one thing? We did have them. We had the disparity studies. We didn't have the will of Room 200 to want them to get passed, okay? So we had very good disparity studies, starting with Professor Bremer, who is was the premier people of doing the disparity studies. We had them. There was no will in Room 200 to implement them, okay? So.
And Room 200 didn't come to us with these numbers. Okay. What we did was use this leverage to make these goals and force them to be in there. And these goals are high. I mean, these are some of the higher numbers we've had, and it's based on the disparity study that shows that there is the capacity, though we have never reached that in the city of St. Louis. Some of those goals, let me go back to page 11. The project sets a participation goal for minorities of at least 37.81% of all labor hours. So those are actual boots on the ground, people working. And not just to say I got 4 employees, 2 of them African American, 2 of them are non-minorities, but these guys only work 2 days a week and these guys work 5 days a week. This measures the actual work hours. And so that's important. City resident goal. Too often we've seen projects that are funded by city tax dollars, but city people can't get jobs on these sites. This sets a project participation goal for city residents of at least 23.28% of all labor hours. Again, boots on the ground, not just companies that got the contracts. And women. The project participation goal for women of at least 6.9% of all labor hours. That number comes from the federal government's goal, 6.9%. And as far as actual companies, sets a goal of 30.51% of all construction prime contract dollars shall go to companies owned by minorities, and sets a goal of 12.23% of all construction prime contracts shall go to companies owned by women. Those are some highlights.
Okay, and I want to thank you for your hard work. Those are very important things. I appreciate it. Everything you can do to make bills bad, even when I don't vote for them, I do like the things that improve them. I think that I believe in hostage politics. You hold it up and you have people that say no, 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 no. And then other people say, well, this crazy girl over here sharing tires, she's kicking me in my rear end, so I got to put something in here to tell people why I'm doing this. So I want to thank you for your hard work. I appreciate it. Mr. President, members of the board, if the alderman from the 7th would yield.
Alderman from the 7th will yield to the alderwoman from the 1st.
Yes.
Alderwoman from the 1st, please proceed.
Alderman, could you tell me what a severability clause is?
Yes, I could.
Please explain that to me, please.
I don't really feel necessary to provide you with legal explanations on the floor.
Okay, but it doesn't have to be illegal. So a severability clause, as I understand it, is a clause that says that, is this your understanding, that if they find any part of a bill illegal, that they can throw that part out and still the rest of it go forward. Is that correct?
That's my
Pretty
understanding.
simple?
Yeah.
Do we have one here?
We do, in both the board bill and the lease agreement, finance agreement.
Thank you very much. That's all I wanted.
Thank you.
So this is why I think you always have to talk to everybody when you're doing things. Sometimes severability clauses are the greatest thing in the world, and sometimes they kick you in your rear end. When you are trying to get things negotiated, it can be your worst enemy, because this is going to be what I would do if I was an old, jaded attorney that's been around for 20 or 30 years. I would deal with you because I was trying to get whatever I could done. And so I don't have any responsibility to deal with you in a fair manner. I would deal with you in trying to let you put everything that you could in this board bill. All the things that you say you want, put them in there. Anything that you think is great, put them in there. And I would make sure that the severability clause was in there. And the reason I would do that is because everything that's illegal in there, I would go afterwards and attack it and take it out. And if it's not legal, it won't stand up. But I'll still have my deal. This would have been a good case. You're talking about sending it back. This would have been a good case to take the severability clause out of it, because then you have either they take it all, including all the great things that you all have done, or you don't have it at all. So that kind of discourages people from going behind you. Now, we already know we have this litigious group of people who don't believe that the citizens have a right to vote, okay? There is nothing that prevents them from going after all these great things that you put in here, these layers, and picking at them one by one by one, because that severability clause protects them, not us, okay? I want to start with that. I've always been taught by my parents that you're supposed to learn from your mistakes, that you're not supposed to repeat the same thing over and over and over again. And so, if you did, you got in more trouble with my parents. If you kept doing the same thing over. Sharon, didn't I tell you this? Yeah, but 24 years ago, 24 years ago, we were sitting here in the same spot, different faces except for about 5 or 6 here. But we were in the same spot, only we didn't have a team, but we were trying, we wanted to have a stadium / convention center. So we went after it with a passion, and we were willing to do anything. And when people know you're willing to do anything, they have you at their mercy, because you're willing to do anything. So we did financing for a stadium convention center, and we had no team. We went into debt. Many of the people here, including the sponsors, were in probably grade school, except for Ortman. I'm sorry, the alderman from the 9th. They were in grade school when we did this. They were in grade school, 20-something years ago. So some of them were in grade school, okay? So, and here we are now, 24 years later. All the things that we said wouldn't happen have happened. We're about to come to an end of a very bad deal that we put together. And then we're coming with a worse deal that will put us into debt for another, 25, 30 years, whatever it is. So some of our grandkids might be here by the time we get out of debt, if we get out of debt. And we haven't learned anything. We haven't even learned how to have a poker face. We haven't learned to be able to say, no, we're not going to do this, and make them come to us. We haven't learned that when a team owner doesn't even want to talk to you, and he says, I will spend $1 billion or more to locate someplace else of my own money, and I'm willing to do that because I don't want to be here. I'm not going to talk to you. But we think we need this so bad that we're willing to put our money at stake for somebody that doesn't even want to be here. If this was your daughter or your son chasing after someone and they were doing this, you would all be so embarrassed and ashamed of them. You would be sitting them down in the corner telling them, don't run after people like this. My mother raised me with pride. I don't run after people. She raised me as a black female that I can do anything that I want to do. And that was from a mother who came from a sharecropper family. Her father died when her mother was very young. My grandmother raised 10 children, all of them productive. 9 of them are living today. In fact, today is my Uncle Fred, who is the patriarch of our family. He turns 85 today. He's one of the people that kept our family together when my grandfather died. So my mother raised me that you cannot make people want you, like you, want to be with you if they don't want to. So you have to let that go. You have to say, that's okay. Here we have a businessman, and everybody else says, oh, he's mean. No, he isn't. He's a businessman. I have no thing at all against Mr. Kroenke, because he's been very plain with us. I do not want to be here. I want to go to California. I don't even really want your money. Keep throwing it at me. You know, we're like at the stripper clubs or something, and we making it rain. We making it rain, okay? And the stripper is throwing the money back at us and saying we don't want it. Now, that doesn't happen very often, okay? They usually pick your money up, okay? And I say that, let me say, I've never been in a stripper club. I am old and boring. So I hear that secondhand from my husband, because when he had his bachelor party, but I'm boring, and I'm very conservative in a lot of ways, so just haven't been into a stripper club. Just that has been my thing. But I do watch TV, so I'm getting this from TV. So when I see on TV, I see the stripper clubs, I see them throwing the money. I've never seen a stripper throw it back at them. I just haven't. So when I see Mr. Kroenke saying to us, I don't want to talk to you, I don't need to take your money, I don't need to do anything with you, because I do not want to be here. And so what we're counting on is that the other billionaires who are Stan's friends are going to say to him, Stan, let me tell you something. You got to stay right here in St. Louis and stay here, because they're throwing money at you. And if they do that, this is what's going to happen. Stan Kroenke is going to have a chance to vote on some of their things that they want to do, okay? And sooner or later, Stan Kroenke is going to have a long memory if they force him to stay here in this city. Now, the other thing is, he still has our original agreement, which allows him every year to reassess where he wants to be. So even if they don't let him move, he still has the ability, year after year, to the end of this thing, not to accept our agreement, but just to keep looking for where he wants to go. Again, I often hear women talk about, people took my husband. Nobody can take your husband, nobody can take your wife. They go because they want to go. Stan Kroenke has told us that he does not want to be here. And we are trying to force him with everything that we have. I don't think that's a good thing. I am going to say, I didn't understand years ago when the former mayor, Shamo, let the Cardinals leave here, and they're out in Phoenix now. But I really want to say, Mayor Vincent Shamo, I understand you now, okay? When he kept coming here wanting more money, Mayor Shamo made the decision that, okay, you can just leave then. And that's what you have to do sometimes. You have to do that with boyfriends, girlfriends, husbands, children sometimes. When you can't get them to do what they're supposed to do, you have to let it go. We are intent upon being a city like Chicago or New York or other places. We don't have the money. We have so many things that are so important that we say no to. We tell, I was given a letter from Frank Oswald, building commissioner, said I could tear down 4 buildings this year. 4 buildings. Now, before I left here, I didn't have that. I mean, that would have been great. But thanks to this board of aldermen, I got a plethora of troubles that I didn't have before I left here, because you put them all into the wards, they couldn't take care of it. So I got all these things that need to be done, 4 buildings. So my people don't understand how we are able to give money to a billionaire, but you cannot tear down the buildings. And I'm talking about buildings that are around parks, that are around schools, that are near people's homes. When I drive through the 4th Ward, I almost want to be in a bomb shelter as I drive through there, because I'm going to tell it, because that's my neighbor. And so all of these buildings are half down. And I still love, because the Ville that's my heart. That's where my family came from. That's where my father-in-law was the principal there. But driving through there, I'm sad, okay? I'm so happy from the alderman from the 3rd, because after years and years and years, Carter Carburetor is almost gone. I drive through there, I got the pride like it's me, okay? I'm so happy for you, because this should have happened a long time ago. In fact, okay, right. Okay. So that is all to say, we don't have money to do what we're getting ready to do. We don't have money, and it's not right for you, anybody else to be, I wish it could be that you guys who are voting for this, that affected the wards that you represent. And so you think this is so good, and I would give you the money that comes in if there would be any money. But for those of us who think it's such a bad idea, and it's negatively affecting our community. I just wish for once the people who vote yes on all of these things were the people in the wards who had to suffer the consequences. They do not. No matter what it is, they do not suffer the consequences. They're the ones that are rewarded over and over again. Let's throw some more money. Let's put $10 million in Washington Street. Let's take our monies that should be going for something else and put it for a hotel. Let's put all of the money downtown, Central West End, and then we'll make up this remarks about why we can't do things in North and South. We can't do the Metrolinx North-South distributor because the federal government doesn't want us to do that. We don't have the money. But we can go down Delmar and tear up the medians that we put there not too long ago and put a trolley car to go to from the Loop to Forest Park. We can do that. There is a part of the city that feels left out. They are disencouraged. And these are people that are successful. People live in all parts of the city because they want to. Not everybody is begging and needs something. They have staked their future on living in neighborhoods, and they like St. Louis. These are our best ambassadors who live in our community and want to be engaged. And they're not being given an opportunity by one judge who says you have no right to do that, and then by this Board of Aldermen who is not giving them respect, who says to them, we think you're smart enough to vote for us, but you're not smart enough to decide if you want to spend your money on a stadium or not. That is wrong. I've heard one of the people here talk about staying in our lanes. I disagree with that statement. Anything that comes before me is in my lane. If it's a pooper scooper law, I try to read the pooper scooper law and know as much as I can. If you ever practice law and you tried cases, which I have and have been for years now, but I used to all the time, and I got not guilties pretty fast against prosecutors, half an hour, 45 minutes, one of the senior ones. Because one of the things you have to do when you practice law is you have to become an expert a little bit in that field. You cannot try a case unless you learn about it. If I'm representing a carpenter, I have to learn about that carpenter. I have to be able to ask questions. And the good thing about the law is that you actually can subpoena people, get in there and get prepared. I've listened to many of the people who are opposed to this, and part of the frustration is we're ill prepared. It is not right, and I've heard other people who are now voting for it, but they've been very frustrated at other times because we're ill prepared. The Alderman from the 22nd Ward introduced a change in our rules because he was frustrated that people would come into the committee hearings and less than 24 hours and bring all of these changes. Now, of course, we didn't quite get there because the loophole was we could just do amendments. But most certainly, and when I voted for it, and somebody who's been here before me, the Alderman from the 11th, got on me and said, why did you do that? Because these are the things that way you can go around it. And he, of course, was right. But the sentiment that the Alderman had was correct, and that is, it is unfair and for us to have to decide on such important things that are all in our lane because we have to vote on them. Every last one of them is in our lane. All of this money is in my lane. These are my tax dollars. That's my lane. That's all these people up here, that's their lane. There's all the, I've never gotten so many emails in my life, even more so now than the famous flags and the changing of the colors. Have I got emails on this stadium, okay? So that is the people are there. They're tilted in and they're caring about this. So when we have to have all of this stuff in such a short time, and then we read in the paper, oh, by the way, what was said on the floor Tuesday, that really ain't true. I mean that the extraordinary steps that, what's his name, Roger Goodell, is that his name, would write a letter to say, hey, by the way, we don't really have that money, we haven't pledged that, and so that's wrong, and so there's not $300 million. That's not what we've pledged. Maybe 200 is the most we'll give, and by the way, we still haven't voted on that. So everything we're doing, we're saying, well, we're just making an offer, but it's not really in concrete, and things could change at will. That is a wrong way to do business. It was a wrong way to do it 24 years ago when we left a loophole that's created this problem. The Alderman from the 21st talked about it. He was correct when he said, well, this was created by a previous board. It was, that I served on, so I have to take responsibility for that, even though I voted no. It was a bad decision to leave such a large loophole. And someone said to me, and I was like, wow, they said, well, if the Rams want to play in a top-tier stadium, then we want a top-tier team. So who are they to demand a top-tier stadium when they're not a top-tier team? So if we're going to pay for that, we want a team in the top tier, okay? And if they can't do that, then let's get rid of the Rams. This is what they said to me. And let's get one of the teams like Washington, which I called my sister. She lives in Washington. And I said, hey, we want the Washington team, okay? They're a top-tier team. You all just won the Super Bowl year before last. And I had never thought about it that way. So this is the things that I'm hearing from the citizens. Why do they get to demand something? And it's like me going onto a plumbing job and saying, I want to be the top plumber. And I don't know anything about plumbing, or I'm a horrible plumber. So how do I get to do this? Why are we spending this money? And we still have so many questions. We've put in a severability clause that is hampering to us. We have the comptroller saying she's not against keeping the team, but she's against this financing package. We have the former comptroller saying he's against it, and not only is he against it, he's sorry for it that he's ever voted for the one that he did. And he did that because they had a part of the financing in 1990 before I came here. And we have the treasurer. We have the people who are in charge of our money saying that this is not a good bill. And we have the President of the United States. I went and did more research saying that we need to stop financing these stadiums. And we have all of this research that says it doesn't make money for the people. It doesn't make money for the teams. And we don't even have to go look any further than what we're doing right now. Right now, we know that we have to kick in money for the stadium we're paying for now because it has not brought in enough revenue for us to pay for the bills. This is wrong. I know the sponsor said in the article that he has the votes and he's going to go forward with this. As I said, I hope all of the people who are going forward with this and thinking that it's okay, I just hope that they have to be responsible for it. I mentioned before, the original sponsor of the bill from 24 years ago is one of the no votes now. One of the people that says this is a bad decision. So I don't know why we don't learn from prior things. It's like we have to keep jumping in the lake and drowning and then saying, oh, maybe we're going to get a different result. Don't have a life jacket, don't know how to swim. The stripper is throwing the money back, but we're all in. This is a bad decision fiscally. This is a bad decision for the people of the city of St. Louis. This is something that we should, as the Alderman from the 24th said, we should reconsider. If nothing else, we should take the severability clause out of it and make it so they either take it all or nothing. And then if they want to renegotiate, they would have to come back here. And we also should make the correction that the Alderman from the 24th talked about. And I would urge my colleagues to vote no on this most important board bill that is flawed in so many ways.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 22nd, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Sometime on small things I get perplexed about, and I really need clarity and understanding. And I stand here still just a little perplexed about the role of the license collector in this bill, based on state statute of how that office is set up. I would ask if the Alderman from the 1st would yield.
Alderman from the 1st will yield the question to the Alderman from the 22nd.
Yes, Mr. President.
Alderman from the 22nd, please proceed.
Thank you, Alderwoman. You stated that you had a conversation with the license collector, and she stated that she could absorb the cost that would be associated.
No, that's not what I said. I said that she said, I asked her, after you and I had spoken Tuesday, then I spoke with her and I said, well, did they even talk to you? Because that's my first question, because oftentimes we do stuff, we don't even have a conversation with people. She said, yes, someone had discussed it with me, and I had agreed that I would be willing to participate in that. So she did say she had been consulted.
Okay, thank you. Mr. President, sometime when we want to make legislation better, we add things that may have unintended consequences. And I was wondering if the alderman from the 21st would yield.
Alderman from the 21st will yield to the alderman from the 22nd.
Yes.
Alderman from the 22nd, please proceed.
Thank you, and thank you, Alderman. It's my understanding that the president and yourself, at a minimum, worked on the amendment. Is that correct?
The minority participation amendment?
Yes.
Yes.
Was there any other member of this board that participated in that negotiation?
Yes.
You mind sharing who?
Alderman Moore and Alderman Carter, as well as Alderman Kennedy were involved.
Okay, and you also stated that there was a lawyer present that offered the amendment for the license collector's office.
Yes.
You mind sharing who that was?
What was his name? From Lewis Rice, Deskin? Larry Deskin from Lewis Rice.
Okay, I want to read the state statute on the license collector's powers and duties of certain officers transferred to that license collector. Section 82.410, every person, firm, association, or corporation shall owe to the license collector all and every duty now due by law or ordinance to the city collector of the revenue or to the license commissioner or other city officer of such city with respect to the assessment, levy, issue, transfer, or revoking of licenses or license taxes for the purpose whatever. All and every duty of said city collector, license commissioner, and other officer of such city imposed by law or ordinance with respect to the assessment, levy, issue, transfer, or revoking of licenses or license taxes for any purpose whatever is hereby transferred to the office of the license collector, created by section 82.310 to 82.410. So that's how that office was created with those particular powers. Alderman, did you hear anything in there about that office being able to disbar, do contract monitoring, compliance, or anything like that?
In your reading, I wasn't listening to all of it, but no, I didn't hear that, no.
Oh, well, I was happy to share anyway.
Thanks.
But I'm perplexed by if the license collector's office is in the business of issuing licenses, why would we want to put an undue burden on that office to do contract compliance according to this bill when we have $1 million in there to pay to a third party to do compliance?
So again, I didn't include that language that came in the floor substitute, but I don't think that it is a problem. I think it adds an extra layer of accountability. I think it adds an additional office that can be eyes on whether or not these contractors are living up to the agreed upon goals. Yeah. That's
Okay.
it.
You know, I did inquire of the license collector, and my question was to give me the best estimate at what it would cost that office to implement. And her best estimate was about $75,000. $60,000 for salaries, $1,000 for computer and accessories, gasoline maintenance insurance, $4,000, unascertained costs, overtime hours, weekend monitoring, $10,000, and that comes up to $75,000. So then I went on to ask the license collector, how would her office implement this? And the response was, your question is premature. At this time, no plans or provisions have been made by the license collector's office to absorb costs associated with Board Bill 219 floor substitute. I mean, how do we create legislation without intimately involving an office that we expect implementation with a fiscal note?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
No, it was rhetorical.
It was rhetorical. It was rhetorical.
If the license collector wants to do all that stuff, I mean, I'm fine with it. I don't necessarily have a problem with it. I just feel it's an undue burden. It's my understanding that the license collector's office already want to increase fees in order to, be more efficient in that particular office.
If I can reply.
Yes.
Yeah, so I pull up the actual language that we're referring to, and this is section 5. So I think the part you're referring to is it says the office of the license collector will be responsible for maintaining the list of any businesses that are disqualified under this section and will attach to those businesses' license records a notice that reflects the disqualification. So I think we might be overstating a bit the actual
Okay, well, tell me why
burden.
the contractor needs to have an office set aside for the license collector's office.
Why what now?
The contractor needs to have an office set aside for the license collector's office, according to Section 4.
Yeah, so not specifically, but there is space on the site that she will reserve for any of the reporting agencies. So it's not my interpretation that that would mean that there would be 7 offices set aside on the construction site, 7 trailers. I imagine this will be shared space.
Okay, so there's this expectation that the license collector's office would go through payroll records and do monitoring, basically, right?
There's a third-party agency that would be doing the day-to-day monitoring, but as I said, the license collector is one of the several agencies in the city and the state level who will receive that information.
Okay.
As well as the committee here at the Board of Aldermen.
Okay, well, clarify for me what your expectations are from the license collector's office in relation to Board Bill 219 floor substitute. What is your expectation that their role is?
As spelled out in Section 5, the Office of License Collector will be responsible for maintaining the list of the businesses that are disqualified under Section 4 and will attach to those businesses' license records a notice that reflects the disqualification.
And to the tune of at least $75,000.
That is a number that the license collector gave you in an email. I have not seen that, but that sounds high to me for that to do what's described in this.
Okay, Tuesday, I asked you a question in reference to disbarment and who would actually do the disbarment, and I offered an amendment to clarify that the disbarment would be done by a certain entity, and you were against that, correct?
Correct.
Now, remind me why you were against that amendment?
Well, I believe your amendment specified that disbarment could only be done by mayoral appointee, president of the board of BPS. The language as it exists simply states that under the city ordinance that contractor would be disqualified from future projects. So in consultation with the attorneys that help put this together, as well as our board attorney, we feel that the broader language is better than to leave it up to just a specific mayoral appointee.
Well, give me 2 examples of other entities that could disbar somebody.
That can disbar someone?
Yeah, under the provisions of this board bill, what other entities would have that authority? Since we're going to leave it ambiguous, what other entities in your mind?
So I don't think that's the question. I think the question is, if it is broad and the law then says that X contractor is disqualified from future city work, then what agency could hire them? And I would say the answer is none should be able to hire them. And furthermore, whoever is responsible for writing the checks, be the comptroller's office or the treasurer's office or whoever, should not write checks to firms that have been disbarred under city ordinance.
Okay. I think a part of my conversation was not someone from the mayor's administration, but the president of Board of Public Service. I was very clear with who. And I didn't have my facts at that time. I was just going off what I thought I knew. But according to the St. Louis City Revised Code, Chapter 6.16, it talks about public works contracts. It also talks about disbarment. Are you aware that there's already a system in place to disbar people from doing city work or getting city contracts?
Sure, and this would apply to the broad language also applies to the president of the board of BPS, but it is not specifically the president of the board of BPS.
But who else? Why would we want to leave it open? Because give me one example. I asked for 2. Give me one other entity that you think should have the authority to disbar.
Well, I think the problem is that if you limit it to just one individual, it then makes it easier to get around it. And there might be a question of whether or not we can in any way specifically require the mayoral appointee to do something. I think that might be a future possibility of contention and litigation. So I think it's, again, based upon both the attorneys and even my reading, I think it's best to leave it broad. But it's a moot point at this point. The bill is perfected.
Okay. You know, it just seems like to me it's another extra layer of bureaucracy, which most people, that's their biggest complaint when they do business with cities. It's too much red tape.
Well, it's a very easy way to get around it. Just live up to the commitment you make about minority participation, and you never have to worry about it.
Well, thank you, Alderman, from the
You're welcome.
21st
Thank
Ward.
you.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I first want to thank you, Mr. President, for allowing the folks to stay up in the gallery.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate that. Would the Alderwoman from the 5th Ward yield for questions?
Alderwoman from the 5th will yield for questioning to the Alderwoman from the 15th. I think she just stepped out. Would you like to proceed or inquire of the Alderman from the 7th?
Well, my question is particularly about a development that's in the 5th Ward, so I feel like that needs to go to the Alderman in the 5th. But I have a question.
You can come back to it in a minute.
Okay. I have a question for the Alderman in the 7th as well, if he will yield for questions.
Alderman from the 7th will yield for question to the Alderwoman from the 15th.
Yes.
Alderwoman from the 15th, please proceed.
Can you tell me when this financing deal expires?
When the financing deal expires, well, it will depend on when the lease is signed, but it's at least a 30-year lease if this comes to fruition.
So the way I read it right now, the financing agreement says an NFL team. We're entering into this knowing that we may not be negotiating with the Rams, but maybe negotiating with another team. Is there ever a point in time where this financing agreement is no longer valid? Can we get 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, and could we still be using this as a financing agreement for a team?
Possibly, yes.
Okay. No further questions.
Thanks.
I find that problematic because what we're doing right now is showing all of our cards. So what we're putting forth now is as good as it gets. If we try to go back, if the Rams leave, we try to get another team in 10 or 15 years like we did before, theoretically we'll be dealing with the exact same agreement we have on the table right now. I think at minimum, and I hope that somebody who voted on the prevailing side will take up the amendment of the Alderman from the 24th, because at minimum we need to put a sunset clause in this. We need to have something that says that you have 1 year, 2 years to negotiate this deal to get a team in here. And if not, we need to be looking at recreating this deal. We can't be working 5 years from now, 10 years from now with the deal that we make today. And without a sunset provision in there, it allows that to take place. I see the Alderwoman from the 5th is back. Would you be willing to yield for questions?
Alderwoman from the 5th will yield for questioning to the Alderwoman from the 15th.
No, thank you.
Okay.
Alderwoman from the 15th, please proceed.
Well, then I'm going to have to go off of the information that I was able to find. So there's a development in the 5th Ward right now called the Stamping Lofts. And it's a $10 million housing renovation project that was completed just in 2014. Of that $10 million renovation, $9 million of it came from government money. And right now that building houses formerly homeless vets. It's in a partnership with St. Patrick's Center, and looking at the current plans, it appears that that facility that we just invested all of this money in is to become a parking lot if this goes through. I think that there are ancillary costs associated with this proposal that we haven't even thought about. We're already at a point where we've had 2 homeless shelters that have closed in the city of St. Louis over the last year, and so now we're looking at, perhaps getting rid of 1 more. And if that's the case, which I can't verify since the Alderwoman is not yielding for questions, I think those are other costs that we have to take into consideration. So I talked a lot about research the other day. I'm not going to bore you with all of that research today. If I did, I could tell you that, I found a study that actually looked at the job creation from building the Scott Trade Center and building the Cardinal Stadium, and actually found that neither one of those, even with the construction jobs, created more jobs. It was just moving jobs around. I could also tell you about another study that showed that actually the St. Louis economy grew faster during the years where we didn't have a football team than during the years when we did. But none of that is really, I think, exactly pertinent, I suppose. It's just research. So, I think the long and short of it is what we need to be doing today at very minimum is going back and fixing two major things with this bill. I think fixing what the alderman from the 24th said. If we're only putting in $1.5 million worth of lease payments, that is as good as we're going to get. And we know from looking at deals in other cities like Minneapolis that we can do a lot better. We need to be coming into this and negotiating from a position of strength and not be coming into this deal just willing to hand over, the financials of the city. I'm also very happy that our comptroller was able to come and talk today. I heard her on the Charlie Brennan show, and one of the things she said that really stuck out to me was the fact that she said, right now we have a $2 million a year budget gap. I think that this deal is fiscally irresponsible because it is increasing that gap from $3 to $6 million a year. And I think what's important about that number that she throws out is it still doesn't take into account those maintenance payments. And so, high end of her analysis shows $6 million a year out of general revenue to support these bond payments, because remember now, all of the tax revenues are going, we're giving those away. None of those are staying with the city now. And so we're looking at $6 million plus any maintenance and operations payments. We could easily be getting up to $8, $10 million a year coming out of general revenue to support this. I urge us to listen to the comptroller. She is our financial, analyst that we have. She is the, I think, voice of reason in a lot of this discussion, because she just looks at it as numbers, not emotionally, not because she, is a football fan or not a football fan, just strictly by the numbers. And if we're going strictly by the numbers, then we need to listen to her. The second thing we have to fix is this severability clause. There are votes that we got for this deal because of that minority participation plan. If any part of that is deemed to be illegal, that entire thing can be struck from this deal, and the deal goes forward without having that minority participation plan. For somebody like me, who has been very active in the racial justice movement, I don't like this deal, but that minority participation deal makes it a little bit more easy for me to swallow this. If we have even the possibility of that no longer being a part of this deal, then we should not be moving forward with this. Last thing I'm going to say, just to close with, is that I don't think it's the end of the world if we lose a football team. We heard on Tuesday Aldermen from the 8th Ward saying that nothing has, nobody has ever come up with another deal. Well, that's actually not true. In 2014, actually December of 2014, Great Rivers Greenway came out, and they have a wonderful video online with a great redevelopment plan for the North Riverfront. It talked about condos, it talked about a brew house, it talked about an ability where people would be out walking around the riverfront year-round, not just 8 games a year. That's the kind of development we need along our riverfront. We need something that's going to be used all the time. Speaking with some of the economists that I have over the course of this, there's one quote that really stuck out in my mind, and it was Dr. Knoll from Stanford, who said, you want to put a football stadium on your least valuable piece of property, because the only thing that produces a worse return on investment than a football stadium is a cemetery. quite frankly, I think that our riverfront is one of our most valuable pieces of property. And if done correctly, if developed correctly, with housing, with businesses, with mixed-use development, with, even an aquarium. We've had a group, even before Autumn came out with her proposal earlier this week, we've had a group for about 2 years who have been working on trying to get folks behind them to open an aquarium on the riverfront, something, again, that would be used more than 8 days a year. So I just want to ask us, somebody on the prevailing side, please be a voice of reason today. Please allow us to make these simple amendments that really do strengthen this bill. It's still going to pass. I will still vote no. But we need to be in a position where we are making a bad bill a little bit less bad. So in the end of the day, we can at least save a little bit of face with the taxpayers of the city of St. Louis. And you know what? We know that this NFL money won't be here to do $1 billion of investment across the city. But we do have $150 million in terms of naming rights that are going into this from a private business. What if we try to leverage businesses like that to do some matching funds to actually do some projects that'll benefit people in wards all across this city? That's the kind of thing that we need to be looking for. So thank you, and I really hope somebody on the prevailing side will bring up one of those amendments.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 19th.
Oh, very briefly. I was sitting there reading the charter, and I looked at a lot of the legal cases that were lost because they tried to make the comptroller do something that the comptroller said was not financially sound for the city. For those who've been around a long time, remember Ray Persich? He didn't play, he took care of our money. I know they sued him a number of times. It was like every other day. Our illustrious Vervis Jones stood his ground. They sued him. But he took care of our city and our money. Our comptroller has made the statements over and over again, as have been made in all the presentations to us at Convention and Tourism on this bill, that if we have no team that is financing the payments for the old debt and/or any new debt, we would be on the hook for $6 million. So it is not about additional, it is about if there is no team. So if, for instance, if the final deal says that there's no team, we have a $6 million current debt that is being paid by the revenue from the team. Remember, if you have no team playing, none of that money is generated. All these other things are not taken care of, and the stadium is not paid for. So you got to remember where that money comes from. I know you've heard all this stuff, but at the end of the day, and that's how I always talked about this on every board I've been on. If you don't understand money and you don't follow the trail of the money will not be beneficial to you. So understand, this is not about anything else. If there is no team, we're good. All we got to do is pay off the current debt, which is $6 million a year. We take it out of our coffers and we pay for it. If we get a new team, which would be so exciting, but whatever. But it would be exciting, which means ticket sales would go up, all kinds of things. It would be wonderful for the city. So they would generate the funds that we've been talking about on financing this stadium. This city coffer, under no circumstances, ever, would have $1 billion to pay for nothing, okay? Ever. So that's not ever going to happen because we don't have it in the first place. We couldn't offer it to anybody because we don't have it. I don't want to continue for us to go down this road of saying half of what happened with something. Just tell all of it. And my poor president, he gets socked with so much stuff. So go online and read the statements about what the president said about public financing of stadiums. He wants to close the loophole for tax exemption for those guys who are making profits off of this. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to take care of that 1% that gets all those extra loopholes. That's what the man said. He didn't say, oh, everything's bad, don't do that. That's not what he said. He says, I'm going to take care of this and make it more equitable so that now when you do these deals, it's not always to benefit the rich guy. I like that. I like the fact that he's even bold enough to try to get it done. Because it's not in his favor to get it done. We know how capitalism works. So the guys that are sitting there, who's the majority in the Senate and the House now, they're not for that. So let's tell all of what was said, not just part of what was said. And again, when you go back and you look at everything that is written in our charter, at the end of the day, I don't care who says what, how, when, where, what they wrote down, what they said in the back room, in the dark, down the street, in the alley. Our comptroller is the financier of the city of St. Louis, and she does not have to issue bonds, sign a lease, or anything if she doesn't believe it is factually and soundly, fiscally sound on behalf of the city of St. Louis. I trust her. She's got our back. End of story.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to talk a little bit about the severability clause that keeps being brought up. Let me first say is, you know, I've been around politics long enough and down at this board long enough to know that it doesn't matter what's said, it only matters what's on paper. And so I don't go into this thinking anybody's going to do us a favor and live up to the spirit of the agreement. We took very careful consideration of putting in language to protect what we put in here. So no one should ever trust anybody down here. I like a lot of people, but I don't trust anybody in this building. So we wanted to make sure that we put in language to protect this minority participation language. So I want to highlight a couple of sections. First, the severability clause that keeps being referred to is actually on page 20, section 10. This is not your boilerplate severability clause. We took we took our time with putting language both in the actual ordinance part as well as in the lease agreement to have a severability clause that goes a little bit above and beyond. On line 12, it says, in the event that any part, section, or subsection of this ordinance shall be determined to be or have been unlawful or unconstitutional, the remaining parts, sections, and subsections shall be and remain in full force and effect unless the court making such findings shall determine that the valid portions standing alone and incomplete are incapable of being executed in accordance with the legislative intent. Now I want to take you to the page before, on page 19 in section 6. What we make clear is the intent of this Board of Aldermen. Section 6, for the Board of Aldermen, achievement of the workforce and business inclusion plan goals is of the essence. That's a legal term. The Board of Aldermen would not choose to provide funding for the project if the project did not distribute its economic benefits in a manner that reflects the diversity of the city's workforce or contractor population as quantified by the City of St. Louis Disparity Study and the City of St. Louis Workforce Study completed in 2015 by Mason Tillman Associates. And so if this ever does go to court and a judge does have to decide, the judge has some guiding language here to make clear that it is our intent that we wouldn't give a dime to this project if it didn't have strong minority participation language, and they need to take that in consideration if they need to make any legal decisions. Second thing is, you know, I think details matter, especially in legislation and any contracts. Details matter, and lots of people have opinions about this deal, whether we should vote yay or nay, whether this is in the best interest of the city or not. People have very strong feelings on both sides of, as you can see from the upper balcony here, people have very strong feelings. But I think the details matter, and it's been said, but let me just state again, that from the city point of view, the city doesn't put in a dime until other people match it by nearly $1 billion. So what we are doing here today is doing step one of a multiple step dance. Okay, we're going to step this way, but if the state doesn't step that way, and then Kroenke and the NFL don't step this day, we're not dancing. But we're going to go first. And the way this is written is that we'll put in $70 million. If it is matched by nearly $1 billion in funds from another source to build a stadium, we'll build it. And then after it's built, from taxes generated in that building, we will contribute another $75 million. So there's no version of this in which the city of St. Louis is spending $1 billion on anything. We don't have $1 billion. We're broke, okay? All right, and so the folks that say, well, it's a choice of why not do this instead of doing that, I wish it was that simple. It's not. I wish we could put $1 billion of investment in North St. Louis neighborhoods, but we don't have a plan on the table where we can put in 70 and somebody will match it by $800 million. We don't have that plan yet. And so that's not the choice on the table. The other thing I'd say is that, people have strong feelings, and even down here on the board, members of this body have strong feelings about this, but I don't think this is the deal to go to the mattresses on. That's a reference to The Godfather, if anybody gets that. This is not the deal to go to war for, all right? A lot of things have to happen to make this thing happen, and if I had to bet, it's a very slim chance that this thing is going to actually come to fruition. What we know is that chiefly a person who does not want to be here has to, according to this agreement, pledge almost $500 million to stay here. Equally, the state, who has not been a great fan or friend of the city of St. Louis, has to contribute $400 million. And so a lot has to be done on the back end. With the passage of this for our 70 or even 150 million, whichever way you want to look at it, we are getting about 10% there. The task force still has 90% to go. So just keep that in perspective, number one. Number two is that, as I've said before, this deal stinks. I don't like being put in this position. This isn't the thing I want to be here on our vacation voting on. This isn't the thing that I want to have spent so much time over the last few weeks on. We got a lot of other pressing issues, but we've been put in this situation. But for perspective's sake, this isn't the worst thing we voted on this year, in my opinion. To me, other deals have been much worse than this. You look at the NGA project, which I voted against. That deal, the city is expending $60 million up front and may get nothing to show for it. That deal we have authorized eminent domain on 491 properties and may get nothing to show for it. In this deal, we don't spend a dime unless it's matched by $1 billion. The Arch project, which I wasn't a fan of, that's federal land. They got more money than Kroenke. They got all the money. And somehow we figured out how to raise our sales tax, which is a very regressive form of taxation, to pay for improvements to federal land. And it's not going to look like what people was hoping it would look like. We're not going to have new shops and boutiques and clubs down under the arch. That's not what's going to happen. It's going to be a park. Was that worth $380 million? I didn't think so. I didn't think that was the best thing we should have raised our taxes for. But I was in the minority then. So I don't want people to put this in the wrong perspective. When this passes, probably in a few minutes, I hope, not here too much longer, when this passes, nothing's done. There's still a lot of work that has to be done in the state legislature and with the NFL. And I think the goal of the task force, frankly, they wouldn't say this, but I'll say it, is that I think the goal is to show a good faith effort that will hopefully sway a few votes from the NFL owners to prevent Mr. Kroenke from getting the 24 votes he needs to move the team. And so if he doesn't get the 24 votes, maybe 2 of those have been swayed by what we do today, even though we're only funding 10% of it. We still got 90% that isn't funded. But if it sways a couple of votes, then it closes that LA door, then Mr. Kroenke will have to sit back and assess what his options are. He doesn't have to sign this. As has been mentioned, he has a lease that has a year-to-year option. He can stay in the dome for a few more years. He can look at other cities. He can possibly sell the team, buy another team, a lot of different options. But what people should also feel secure in is that the way this is worded, and this again, details matter, the way that this is worded is that any of these numbers change, we have to vote on it again. So if the NFL says we're not going to put in $500 million or $550 million, instead they say we're only going to put in $200 million, well, that's changed it. So we'll have to vote on this again. If the state says we're not putting in $400 million, we're only going to put in $200 million. Or if they say they're going to put in $600 million and that'll reduce Kroenke's, whatever it is, if there's any changes, we'll have to vote on it again. Mm-hmm. So I don't give Exhibit D, which is actually the proposed project sources of funds and uses, it's a slim chance, I think, of that actually happening. The other thing is that the amount that we're putting in, $70 million on the front end through the bonds, if you look at the proposed uses of fund, that is not even enough to acquire the land and prepare it. Okay, so our money doesn't even get to building the stadium. That's how little percentage ours is compared to where the rest of that money has to come from. So again, I just think people need to keep this in perspective. And for members of the board, I don't think this is the deal you want to damage long-term relationships with. I think we all have to work together for a very long period of time, and we should just keep this in perspective.
All right, thank you, Alderman. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 5th, you're recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to renew my motion for passage of Board Bill 219, floor substitute.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 5th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th, that we third read and finally pass Board Bill 219, floor substitute. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. No. Alderwoman Flowers. Aye. Alderman Bosley. Aye. Alderman Moore. Aye. Alderwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Ingracia. Yep. Alderman Kotar. Aye. Alderman Conway. Aye. Alderman Ortman. Aye. Alderman Vollmer. Aye. Alderman Villa. No. Alderman Arnowitz. Aye. Alderwoman Murphy. Aye. Alderwoman Howard. Aye. Alderwoman Green. No. Alderwoman Behringer. Aye. Alderman Rhodey. Aye. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. No. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. No. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Arnowitz. Present. Alderman Kennedy. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Boyd. "17 aye votes, 10 no votes, 1 present."
By a vote, staying the motion, Alderwoman from the 5th and 3rd read and finally passed Board Bill number 219, floor substitute. Courtesy. I move for adoption of our cursed resolution calendar. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 18th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All other business being suspended, the President shall in open session affix his signature hereto to the end that these may become law. Report of enrollment.
Board Bills 237, 246, and 219, floor substitutes.
First reading of resolutions.
Sorry. Resolution, we have none. We have none.
Second reading.
Resolution 142 as amended. Sponsored by Alderwoman Hubbard, the Board of Aldermen authorizes the Land Clearance for Redevelopment Authority to file eminent domain proceedings in circuit court to take any other actions authorized by law against all of the particular parcels of land identified in Exhibit A to this resolution.
Alderwoman from the 5th, you recognize on the second reading of resolution number 142 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for final adoption of Resolution 142 as amended.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 5th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th. Please proceed.
I'd like to renew my motion.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? It's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution number 142 as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. There's been a request for roll call. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coulter. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
No.
Alderwoman Tyus. No. Alderman Moore. No. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderman Kennedy. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Williamson. All right. "17 aye votes, 7 no votes, 1 abstain, 2 present."
By your vote, you sustain the motion. Alderwoman from the 5th, and adopted Resolution 142 as amended.
That's the extent of second reading of resolution.
Miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Monday, Public Safety Committee meeting at 10 a.m. Public Safety Committee meeting Monday, December the 21st at 10 a.m. The office is closed on Thursday, and the office is closed on Friday, not Thursday. The office is closed on Friday, December the 25th, Christmas Day. That's the extent of my announcements.
Any further announcements? Alderwoman from the 1st.
So the board, I know we're not introducing, we already introduced special.
Hold it down, please.
We already introduced special guests, but I wanted to acknowledge that Joanne Williams, a longtime friend of mine and former BA with the Carpenters, is my special guest today. She's out there hanging out in the leisure room, but she is here today, and I just want to welcome her.
Let's give Joanne a round of applause. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Bishop Marvin Sanders.
All right, Bishop, thank you for being here today. Also want to just thank each and every member of this board. I noticed we've had a lot of bills this part of the session, and it's been a very busy session. You guys have worked a lot of long hours, and I, for one, appreciate all the work that you do. I know when you go on these breaks, it's never a break because you have all the stuff to do within your community at the same time. But I'm going to ask that you guys try to enjoy your break so that we can come back and get back to work. It's been a long week. Alderman from the 19th, did you have something? All right. Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion to excuse. Alderman from the 18th. It's over to the left.
Right here. Mr. President, members of the board, I move that the Alderman from the 26th be excused for necessary absence.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th, entertain a second. Seconded by the Alderman from the 11th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Alderman from the 18th, you're recognized on the motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move that the board adjourns until Friday, January 8th to 10 a.m.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 11th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Stand adjourned.